This is a not weird episode. No, I'm sorry. I catch myself every now and again. I just want to say this is a weird one. It's just such a normal thing to say because, well, let's just go ahead and talk about it because it's like, okay. So we have what is, let's be honest with ourselves, an extremely typical plot. So typical that it's completely predictable. You can guess where everything's going from the beginning. And yet they do several atypical things and several good things in its execution. Good foreshadowing, good presentation, good visuals. I mentioned the directing, and once again we see the new director's visual style showcasing here. I don't actually know if it's a new director. I haven't actually looked it up, and by the time this video or the previous video goes live about the director thing, it'll be weeks from now, so who knows? I'm sure I'll find out at some point. But I look at this like, really? This is a clearly distinct and new style. I like it, don't mistake me. So, I want to talk about the animations of the Trandoshans. I know that sounds like a weird thing to comment on, but I felt like they did a really good job of making them seem still humanoid, still relatable and understandable, but not quite human. There were a lot of things they were doing that didn't quite line up with how a human being, for example, would be talking or standing, or even most of the aliens we've seen in Star Wars. Weird movements, mostly with the shoulders, and like the upper body kind of shifting around, and the head kind of going around in sort of this almost lizard-like pattern. I feel like whoever the animators are did their homework on trying to make them look just a little bit alien, just to vary them up from the norm. And I think it worked pretty well. In fact, these are probably some of the most alien aliens I've seen in the Clone Wars thus far. Go figure. Because it's the Trandoshans, which have been around since forever. There's a recurring theme that goes between, well, I hesitate to call it the A-plot and the B-plot, but we see Anakin, who's like, I will not abandon her, I will do everything necessary to succeed. And we see Sir Her, who is like, I will not abandon her, I will do everything necessary to succeed. What I find most interesting, and I don't know if this is true or not, is in both cases it is presented differently. In other words, he is being presented in being foolish to the point of ridiculous, letting his emotions get the better of him. But she is being presented as someone who is using her emotions as a strength, refusing to be ground down. There's an extremely cliche and typical scene where she's like, you have just shown up and you have shown us the light and blah, 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 blah. But despite being cliched and typical, it's still interesting to see because it makes sense. If you are a bunch of Padawans who have been surviving, and nothing else, for months or years or however long it's been on this damn place, you're going to be ground down. She says, we've almost lost hope. I'm sorry, they already lost hope. There is no new hope here. They're gone. They had already accepted the fact that this was just going to be their life, and were living with it. And I'm not casting shade. I'm not trying to say that's a negative thing. I'm just saying they had already given up this, but she uses her emotions as a strength in order to find the will to actually do something in the situation. In other words, and I like this, emotion can be a good thing and can be a bad thing. And that's the dark side in a nutshell, isn't it? Speaking of which, we don't kill out of hate. Do we kill out of survival? I'm just wondering. For those of you who don't remember what I'm talking about, there's this scene where Elisa, or whatever her name is trying to kill the Trandoshan who's hunting them, and Ahsoka stops her, saying, we don't kill out of hate, that's not what we do. It's like, that's not our way. Okay. He's trying to actively kill you. All of them are. I think at that point you are officially okay with killing them. It wouldn't even be murder. It would literally be self-defense. And that kind of got my brain going. Obviously, that isn't the Jedi way, blah, blah, blah. But I started thinking about it. Has Ahsoka ever killed anyone? Now, I don't know. And I'll trust, Star Wars gurus who are far more versed in the Clone Wars and the EU and the AU than I am to be able to answer this question. But I don't think Ahsoka's actually killed any organic individual until now. I could be wrong. Now, I say that way very specifically because, obviously, I firmly believe in the fact that droids should be counted as sentient sapient beings after a certain point in time, after droid effect has taken place. But most of the droids she would have fought are not going to be like that. In fact, I would say all of the droids she's fought are not going to be like that. And even if they had developed sentience, she has basically been trained from birth, just like half the galaxy, most of the galaxy has been, that droids are not people, that they are property, furniture. Therefore, even if they were sentient and sapient in reality, Ahsoka wouldn't be thinking of them as such. Just numbers. Do you really think a lot about shooting an enemy in a video game? No, of course not, because that's not a real person, right? So in other words, this might be the first time Ahsoka has actually killed, and thus her statement about "we don't do that" suddenly makes a little bit more sense. I guarantee you, if that was a droid, she would have just... and it's over. Now, I mentioned the good foreshadowing. There's several Wookiee pelts, and there's also a Wampa pelt, which is kind of impressive in its own right. But there's several Wookiee pelts you can see fairly early on in the episode. Unfortunately, later on they zoom in big on the Wookiee pelts just to make it really obvious, just in case anyone missed it, which is a shame. You know, I was going to give a plus to story, so to speak. But I liked the earlier foreshadowing of the Wookiee pelts, because we know where this is going. What else? Don't kill out of hatred. Has she killed? Two more things, two more thoughts. I've actually started taking very brief notes on my phone while I've been exercising to try and keep my thoughts a little bit more coherent for these. Let me know if you can tell the difference. First of all, there's this great scene where they're like, "Don't overestimate your abilities," and Ahsoka turns and says very simply, "I'm not." I like the finality with how she says that, because either she's going and knows she can handle this to whatever extent she can, or she's going with acceptance that she might not succeed. That's actually a very Jedi thing to do, and I kind of like the way they present that. Excellent voice actress, as usual. The other thing I want to point out is the Trandoshans go around capturing people to use in their hunts. Why don't they just have a legal way to do that? Like, I know that sounds like such a strange question, but Star Wars has a lot of pretty horrible stuff happening in it, including slavery, one of the worst things that exists, in my opinion. And, not the worst, just one of the worst. And slavery is semi-normal in Star Wars, to the point where it's kind of mundane to have slaves. And you're telling me that they can't just go and have some kind of legal method where the Trandoshans either have an economic arrangement, or maybe they have some kind of military arrangement, or some kind of tribal organization, or something going on, where they provide some service or good or fund, and in exchange get slaves or people or whatever to go hunt. Like, is that just... I just point that out because it feels like such a weird thing that they are basically criminals in addition to being morally reprehensible. Anyways, that's all I've got. I'll see you guys next time, week, day, whatever, for the conclusion of Wookiee Hunt.